Hello, adventurers. Today we're talking about backstories. We've all got a couple of cool ideas floating around in our heads of characters that may or may not even survive until the first session. But real quick, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Podcash as a collaboration between Racket and Stir. Podcash is free cash for your podcast. And recently they gave away $100,000 to up-and-coming podcasters, and we were lucky enough to get a little of that cash. So if you're hearing this, it's probably because we spent money that they gave us on advertising. And so thank you so much for giving them a good investment. If podcasting has been on your to-do list, or if you're already a podcaster, check out podcash.com and stay up to date with future podcast happenings as podcash.com. Without further ado, let's roll some initiative.
Sometimes talking with friends feels like role-playing. Sometimes it feels like combat. Join us at the round table and roll initiative. This is Curmudgeons and Dragons.
Hello, adventurers. Welcome back to Curmudgeons and Dragons. My name is Jason Portizo. I am joined today by Mr. Jim Crocker.
Hey.
Ms. Josie Diaz.
Howdy.
And
Lieutenant.
Ensign.
What are they called? Disgraced soldiers, the ones that got kicked out.
Dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Former
what
President
happens.
Greg Genovis. There we go.
There we go. Former President Greg Genovis.
Got him.
Ex POTUS.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Ex POTUS sounds like a spell.
like a Harry Potter fanfic spell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Expodiate hole. All right. So.
In other news, I found a photo of a chicken mage, and I believe that will be my first wizard character.
Nice.
All right.
He's got a cool hat.
I hope he does. Does it look nice?
It does. Here, wait.
Awesome.
Let
Makes
me show
happy.
you on this audio medium.
That is absolutely a chicken mage.
Amazing. I want him.
I wonder what his backstory is.
Oh, excellent job, Josie, with the
A very smooth segue. Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Would have been great if I didn't
We've
fuck it up
ruined
by
it
drawing,
by pointing
drawing
it out,
attention
but
to
that's fine.
it. I think we made it better. So
I'm still drinking.
the thing we want to talk about today is how to make a good backstory. So we all kind of have some ideas in the back of our head of some very loose characters that we think might be fun to play at some point down the line. At least I do.
Oh, I have a whole stable.
See?
Chicken mage.
Chicken mage. They say this is sometimes you just get the one who's scrolling through memes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, chicken mage. I can make a character out of that. So like and sometimes it could be as simple as like, I want to play an elf wizard. Never seen an elf wizard before. Let's see if we can make an elf wizard. Sometimes it's a little more of like, we have part of the story in mind, but we don't know what the race or class might look like. And I'm just going to keep referencing the campaign I'm currently in. What does a reluctant hero look like? Someone who doesn't want to be there. How did he get there? And what even would he be? So let's figure out what's a good way to go from loose concept into ready to go session one.
I think a good place to start is getting familiar with the setting that you're in.
Okay.
I know the same loose character concept can be executed very differently depending on the setting. For example, are you in Ravnica? Are you in Faerun?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a homebrew?
Sure.
Those three different settings can have wildly different end results for that same loose character concept.
Yeah, especially like something more urban like Ravnica or parts of like Baldur's Gate versus like the Wild West of the Faerun.
Yeah, or you're all magical students in Strixhaven. I mean, we're talking about Harry Potter before. That's a very different feel to it than your Ravnica or like Eberron or certainly like a Dark Sun game or something like that.
Sure.
Awareness of your setting is very important for developing characters for that setting.
So when a DM has a world in mind, whether it's one that's already established or one that he probably spent months working on and doesn't want ruined by Josie. So let's talk about how collaborative this should be between the player and the DM. This is something we kind of touched on last week in the DM Academy episode when a player and a DM couldn't quite agree on which parts are whose responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you divvy up the responsibility there?
I think it makes the thing that we touched on before makes a huge difference whether you're using an established setting where you kind of have to proceed with some stuff kind of carved in stone already. Like, if it's a Strixhaven game, everybody is going to be a student at Strixhaven. Like, that's locked in. You can't say, I'm somebody from somewhere else that has nothing to do with this setting, and I just happen to get dropped into it. I mean, I suppose if you could try and work out a way to do that, but it's like completely legit for the, to put some guardrails down there to say, okay, your background has to fit in with this because we've got this setting that we're doing here.
That could be true for a homebrew game too. Like
it can be true for a homebrew game, absolutely. I mean, and if you have a real solid idea of exactly what you want your homebrew game to be, same story. I tend to want to, if I'm starting a new campaign, start with a real general idea of what's going on, and then use backstory in part to help build the campaign along with the players, which is another totally legit approach. But you got to know going in before you sit down what's going on with that. I'm a big believer in everybody sitting down and making their characters all at the same time and talking about all of this, regardless of whether it's, more locked in or way more loosey-goosey. Everybody going off to do their own thing and then coming together, and then the DM has to try and figure out how to fit these 4 or 5 disparate backstories that had no collaboration with each other together. That can be a big pain in the ass.
Yeah. The campaign I made now, we kind of all showed up to the table with like a 2-sentence, very loose character. And then
that's great.
With the DM, all of us at the same, it was Zoom. So, we'll use the term table loosely, but, all together we rolled our characters together and, placed to them from, where are you from, or what island in, this was in Wild now, what island off of the Menagerie Coast are you from, all that kind of stuff. So there's a couple of cool resources where if you're really stuck or even just want the inspiration to move forward on your own, I got a couple of books next to me. One of them is going to help you figure out who your character is, and the other one is going to literally just hand you answers and you can decide whether or not you keep them. So I think this is also in the regular player's handbook and probably in other books and other settings as well. The one that I used recently is in the Wildmount book, but this is the Heroic Chronicle. Have you guys seen this?
I
no, this
so,
is
yeah.
I don't have Wildmount yet, but this is a thing I've seen people talking about and being useful and kind of a good supplement to the basic background stuff.
I saw
that's
something
in the PHP.
similar. I don't know if it was in Tasha's or in Player's Handbook, and I'll have to check it out. But it starts with things like your homeland, your social status, your home settlement, your family. So let's look at the family section for a second here, and all you're doing is just rolling dice. And depending on what you roll, it's going to give you an idea of, on a random level, what your family looks like. So, for example, you roll a D100 and tell you how many of your parents are still alive, how big your family was, how many siblings you have, what those siblings were. Are they alive and well? Are they alive and unknown? Have they died somehow? Are they in the clergy? Are they out working? Are they also adventurers? So that was kind of cool. And it just took me about 20-30 minutes to go through the whole thing. There's a lot here.
And I really love that all those tables can be random tables or pick lists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can be like, I've got some vague idea, but let me look at this list just to lock it down. And then you might get an idea that you wouldn't have had just trying to, brainstorm on a blank sheet of paper. But you don't necessarily have to make it completely random for all of them. You can do 2 or 3 of them. And then when it starts to take shape and say, oh, okay, now I know where we're going with this. And then fill the rest in yourself, or pick instead of roll. That's why those tables are so great like that.
And also having the outline of like a character in front of you makes it so much easier to fill in the details of each thing. Like being like, oh, well, according to what I've just rolled, my character comes from a noble family and had 3 siblings. You've already got the first half of the story going. You just got to fill out what noble family, what were the siblings' names, how did you guys interact? Like it gives you a starting point, which for me, a lot of the times is the hardest part about making the character. Like picking what kind of race and class and whatever. I'm just like, that's whatever I'm feeling at the moment, I guess.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Picking your race and class, that's the fun part. This is the work.
This is the stuff you got to sit down and be like, okay, like why the fuck did I decide to leave everything behind to go start out as a level 1 ranger that can barely put a fucking arrow in a bow?
So the fun stuff, that's coming up with the character. This is coming up with the story.
Yeah.
And knowing that, okay, you're going to have some sort of tie to a noble family, but you don't know which one. That's where you start coming up with the DM. Okay, what are my options? I want to be from an area that is kind of like this. What do you got? And I need to be tied to a family that's something like this. How am I tied to them, and who are they?
The other thing that can be real cool about those tables, and like Josie reminded me of this when she was talking about, I'm from a noble family and I've got 3 siblings. Is like, I'm from a noble family and I have 3 siblings is like the pitch for a soap opera, like right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't need anything else for that. But the great thing about that is by forcing yourself to use these random tables, it can kick you out of that, like the habit of doing certain kinds of characters having cliched backgrounds. Like, like if you're a barbarian, I'm from a tribe, they were wiped out, I was lashed to a wheel and forced to, become strong, and then I became a gladiator, kind of thing like that. No, I'm a barbarian, but I was from a noble family with 3 siblings. That's a whole different barbarian. Why did you leave your land, where you could have been the next chief and stuff like this? And that thing where can kind of kick you out of those habits and cliches is a really neat reason to look to some of these random tables.
So what I ended up doing was I did the rolls, and there was more than one roll where I'm just like, that result doesn't make sense to me.
Sure.
That doesn't feel like what I had in mind for this. And randomly deciding what you don't want can also find you what you actually want.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from being a completely unknown. It's like, siblings. It's like, okay, I haven't even thought about this at all. And I rolled in and said, like, I had like 4. I'm like, that seems excessive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Through different things and other roles affecting other roles. And okay, this part of the story fit in this way and this part fit in this way. We eventually found it out that the one sibling that I did get to make up was the reason that my guy was out adventuring when he didn't want to be in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
We gave him a name, and he may be a plot hook later. We don't know. I don't know where he is. So this could be cool.
I think important to remember with a thing to remember with the backstory random tables, it is not a skill check. You can roll them as many times as you feel comfortable with. Like Jason said, like nothing's really fitting with the character you have in mind. Or even if it just
half fits.
Yeah.
If it's like, I kind of like that idea, but what if I took it in a slightly different direction? Like, you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, these are all suggestions, and that's what's cool.
They're guidelines. It's like pirate code.
Yeah.
So that's one resource with a book you probably already have if it's in the setting that you're in. And then the other one that I have here, and this is just out of my collection, I know there's a lot more. I have a book here by James D'Amato. This is the Ultimate RPG Character Backstory Guide. This is prompts and activities to create the most interesting story for your character. And I bought this on a whim. I found myself at a gaming store. They didn't have anything that I really wanted to buy. I wanted to support them. And so I just grabbed this off the shelf. And I kind of thought it was going to be a little bit more of like an informative, like textbook almost, and like kind of teach a little bit. What it is instead is prompts that you want to like ask and answer as your character. And it's kind of divided up by low level, mid level, high level. So for example, I'm just going to grab a random page here. This is in the low level section. It's titled, What Can You Do For Me? It's asking you to fill out, okay, what do you want? The person most suited to help you find that, why they're most suited for that, and what you might have to do to get that person to actually help you, whether it's just go up and ask them, or if you have to trick them or bribe them or defeat them in battle, or, it may be super easy, it may not. So that can help you not only figure out who the character is, but what your possible future plot hooks might be too. Mm-hmm. Jim, you have this book, right?
I've seen it before. I've flipped through it. I am a big fan of something called backstory cards, which are, it's literally just like it sounds. I mean, it is a deck of cards with prompts and questions on it. I mean, it started as kind of like a indie game thing. It's Brooklyn Indie Games is the publisher. And I think they're kind of originally intended for Fate and Fate characters. But I find they work real well for D&D backstory stuff, especially when you get to that point where kind of everybody has their individual backstories, but then you're trying to tie the characters together. There's a lot of that kind of stuff on the backstory cards. Like I'm looking at some of them right now. And so you'll get questions like, you and another PC did something at a place, and you want to make that like, a place that you come up with or that is significant to the background. And at least one of you regrets it or is ashamed of it. What lengths will you go to hide it? And so this kind of like forms some of those connections. And there's like ones that create drama, stuff like that kind of create connections between characters that are interesting, that are hooks you can pull on. There's solo stuff. One of them is you owe some group in a big way. Why can't you get out from under this debt or obligation? And then you can take like that, kind of generic group. And if you're playing in a Eberron game, it's like, one of the governments of one of the nations. If you're playing in a Ravnica game, it's one of the guilds, right? And then you can just kind of backfill in from there. But they're neat because you can kind of just like, shuffle the deck, flip it over, sort of pass one out to each player, or maybe one or two, and then just have them look at it and say, okay, what do we learn about everybody in the group as we go around and fill these things in collaboratively?
That sounds awesome. Are you looking at the ones that are by Galileo Games?
Yes, yeah, Galileo Games. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Brooklyn Indie Games originally published it. Galileo Games now distributes it. You can get them PDF so that you can print and play yourself on drive-through, or you can get if you go through drive-through cards, they'll send you a POD deck of them all already printed out and ready to go.
Yeah, no, we actually have an affiliation with Drive-Thru RPG,
oh, cool.
So we'll have a link in the show notes. That is an affiliate link. So if you end up getting these for yourself, you'll be helping us out too.
Yeah, no, I love them. They're pretty great.
Yeah, I love the idea of gamifying your session zero.
Mm-hmm.
This is something we brought up before. Where like make your session zero fun. Like you're about to play a game. Like go play a game before you play a game. It's great.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be reading the booklet of rules for Monopoly every time you have a session zero.
Yeah, your session zero doesn't need to feel like a sterile, info dump type of thing. Like it should be just as fun as the game, I think.
Yeah, it was. I was looking at the DM Academy, and somebody had posted a document where they said, "Here's my session zero document. What do you guys think?" And it was like 4 pages of just their house rules, and it's like, well, and I was like, this is a great house rule supplement to your session zero, but boy, this is only a tiny part of session zero. Make sure, you understand session zero is a session where you're all sitting down and talking about it. And this is an aspect of it. Absolutely. You want to let the players know, here's the changes I've made to the rules and stuff, but that is like kind of tangential to the actual story stuff that's going on.
Meanwhile, Jim is trying to decide, okay, does this go in a DM Academy episode or a horror story episode?
Yeah, well, it's related. So, but one of the things I do want to make sure that we don't forget here, and that we don't get too, there's lots of cool resources, but you can do worse than just using what the PHB gives you for the actual backgrounds. It's fairly limited in that there's only like half a dozen of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just sort of stuck, you can look at it, and they're very tweakable. Like folk hero can be a bunch of different things. You can absolutely do worse than just, if you're in a pinch, just look at those, whatever it is, folk hero, hermit, acolyte, and just look at some of the options that they give you, mix and match those with some other things.
Yeah.
And those resources are there. It's not completely ignored in the PHB if that's all.
And there's tables in there too that can help you randomize your your ideals, your flaws.
Yep.
That kind of stuff. If you don't have a character hook to pick up with your own, if you can't make your own, store-bought is fine.
Yes.
I do know a lot of the newer Wizards books specifically does have like that character creation random table specific to the setting.
Right. And I only brought the Wildmount one just because I just used it recently and I knew what page it was on. Yeah. And I didn't feel like flipping through my other books to find more. But on my shelf, I probably have 7 more that I've never even looked at.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like Ravnica and Eberron both do a great job of that. I've got both of those. And there's a whole lot of stuff in there about like how to figure out which guild you're from and what it means if you're from a guild, and the concerns you're likely to have and stuff.
I do have Ravnica. I forgot I even had
Ravnica is a great book.
Oh yeah.
I was actively playing Magic when Ravnica came out, and like when I heard that D&D was picking it up, I wasn't playing D&D. I just thought it was so cool that like this is one of the best flavor-wise. This is one of the best settings that Magic has ever come up with.
Setting for sure.
Unbelievable. They really just went all out, and even just for the Magic side of it, a game that doesn't need lore, a game that needs mechanics and nothing else.
Yeah.
And like the fact that they went that far into developing a very
seriously.
Very cool world.
Well, but but then there's like novels and comics and all that kind of stuff, and
there absolutely are, but those aren't necessary for the game.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's true.
You can play a tournament without knowing who Gerard is.
Yeah,
but that's one of those things where I think a setting as rich and like well defined as Ravnica makes a background a lot easier to do.
Mhm.
Because like
Absolutely.
you know what everything is, and you're like, oh yeah, I want to be one of those like crazy circus performers that is always like starting riots in the city. I think that sounds awesome, and then you just got to kind of figure out kind of around the edges of that how you ended up doing that. But
Mhm.
boy, having a good strong setting, I mean that's the thing to recommend those pre-published settings is that's all there and you can just lock right into it.
Yeah. So let's just backtrack a little bit here. So we got a player who has a very rough idea and is about to present it to his DM. And he's like, "Here, I've got this thing. I want to be. Well, let's say I want to be a juggler who turns into a rogue. That's as far as I got. DM, what do I do from here? So what would you say to this player who just like what's that player's next step?
I mean, it kind of depends on what campaign we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Okay,
Yeah.
fair. Let's say.
Well, I want to just mention real quick too, like building a level 1 character. A lot of people, when they're making the backstory, give them like ridiculous feats that they've already accomplished. It's like, bruh, you can barely hold your sword the right way right now. Like, you were a
Yeah.
barkeep for your whole life, and then you discovered that when you get mad, you're real good at punching things. Like, make sure that you're building a character to the level that you've created it for.
Yeah. That is something, Jim, I think I'd like to pick your brain about on a future episode is starting off at level 0 and like getting to the level 1 where the sorcerer discovers his magical
Surprise, I got
bloodline.
magic.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to do it as like a Dungeon Crawl Classic style funnel, where everybody starts with like 4 or 5 characters and then they all get killed horribly until you end up with one left,
Yeah.
which is a super fun way to do that, actually.
That
You
sounds
know,
great.
Royale.
that's what everybody wants. It is crazy fun, and that's why DCC has, been so successful. But yeah, I think there's ways you can do that. Yeah, kind of like do it sort of through play, and you can actually roll some dice, so you can just have like a little narrative session where you all kind of describe what happens. Whatever your initial sort of call to adventure as a group was, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a real neat way to do that. I know that like I've heard like other campaigns have talked about like one of the things that you can kind of do is to say, okay, is to just sort of throw situations at people, and then how they responded and what happened is kind of helps inform their background. Like when you were 10, your brother fell down a well. What did you do? Did you go get help? Did you like grab some vines and pull them down and throw them down to him? Did you yell down to him a smart way for him to get out? And that kind of thing. And, and build on, have some situations that you hand to people. And then depending on how they respond to them, that can help build their background. That's sort of a much more narrative way to go about it.
I hadn't thought about that, so that actually sounds like a lot of fun. I'll try that.
Yeah.
Especially that the funnel idea. We'll make up a whole bunch of characters. This is great because I have like so many characters that I like that I think would just be kind of cool, and it'd be great to have most of them die so I can play the one that I want that deserves to be played.
Yeah,
that DCC funnel concept is pretty amazing and a whole lot of fun.
If you have any information on that, Jim, I would appreciate them.
Oh yes, yeah, I'll send that along to you. I should run one.
Not
of
only for
those
the listeners,
sometime.
but for me.
Yes,
that'd be great.
Yeah, fuck the listeners.
No, we love our listener.
I am going to add one thing, which is that we just started a brand new Eberron campaign last night, a 5e Eberron campaign, and my DM did a thing that I hadn't seen anybody do before that I'm totally going to steal from now on, which was we did all of our background stuff. And then he went around to each of us and he said, okay, out of all that background stuff you've done, which is the most interesting to you? And I said, oh shit, well, I had this thing. And he goes, okay, cool. And he made a note of that. And clearly that's a thing that he is going to come back around
That's
in
awesome.
the game.
That's great.
And making that distinction between background stuff that's there to just kind of inform you and help figure out who your character is versus no kidding background stuff that you want to see come back and be important. That was really cool. And that's definitely something I'm going to do from now on.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for hanging out. You can find us on various social medias that we may or may not even give a shit about anymore. I'm at Jason Portizo. Jim's at Jim Likes Games. Josie's at Goblin Scratches. And Greg is also here.
We keep Greg in a wooden box in the shed.
He keeps himself in a wooden box in the shed. That's his box.
It's very comfortable.
He likes it.
Yeah, we put your
He
name
likes
on
it
it.
there.
We bedazzled that box for you.
Yeah. It's a very nice box.
Thanks for listening. See you later.
Take it easy, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Curmudgeons and Dragons. Please share this with your favorite adventurers. Leave a review on Apple and follow us on social media. All links can be found at curmudgeonsanddragons.com. Practice safe adventuring, my friends.
This has been a JTP Audio podcast. Thanks for listening.